Number 15. Groundhog Day. I know a lot of people would choose Ghostbusters as their definitive Bill Murray film, but for me, it's Groundhog Day. A story of a bitter weatherman, Phil Connors, who goes to cover the groundhog at Punxsutawney and finds himself reliving the same day over and over again.
Where's everybody going?
To Gobbler's Knob. It's Groundhog Day.
It's still just once a year, isn't it?
It starts off kind of slow, but Murray continues to deliver his unique brand of humor, until it goes for a dark turn where he gets fed up with everything and attempts to kill himself. When he realizes suicide doesn't work, he tries to fall for his producer, a lively, good-spirited woman named Rita. At first he uses his curse to his advantage, memorizing what food she likes, and even attempts to learn French poetry to win her over.
Believe it or not, I studied 19th century French poetry.
What a waste of time.
Believe it or not, I studied 19th century French poetry.
La fille qui j'aimerais.
You speak French.
Oui.
When he constantly fails, Phil resorts to doing all sorts of good deeds for people, making him the talk of the town. It would seem like your typical love story, but the fantasy element of a guy waking up on the same day makes it a unique film. This is another one that benefits from a really good script. It's both funny and depressing, but in the end, it's another uplifting film. Number 14. Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Good morning. I'm here.
I would classify this one as just another dumb entertainment movie, but it's got a sense of magic that I just can't explain. This was a Tim Burton film. You know, the guy who made Batman, Beetlejuice, and Edward Scissorhands. For a movie about a man and his bicycle, it's surprising how creative it is. Then again, given how whacked out Pee-wee's playhouse was, I don't know what I expected. So Pee-wee gets his bike stolen and has to go cross country to find it. He goes through Texas and eventually ends up in Hollywood.
You are an inspiration to us all.
I'll say, I'm going to start a paper route right now.
Where we get another awesome climax, where Pee-wee has to evade authorities while saving animals from a burning down pet store. It all seems very random, but there seems to be a method to the madness. There's a couple of really cool dream sequences, one that uses some impressive stop motion, and Danny Elfman's score is one of the best. Even if you've never seen the movie, you'd probably recognize some of its music. I watched this as a kid, and while I didn't understand it, enjoyed every minute. Watching it now as an adult, well, I'll be honest, I still don't quite understand it, but Pee-wee Herman is an undeniably lovable character, and his brand of humor is infectious.
I'm trying to use the phone!
As far as the sequel, Big Top Pee-wee, it's certainly nothing to write home about, and is pretty much unrelated. Instantly quotable and highly entertaining, I'm disappointed whenever this one doesn't come up. Number 13. Batman. This is one that seems to pop up on everyone's favorites list. It only seems fitting that I follow one Tim Burton classic up with another. For a man who claimed to have never read comics, he did an amazing job converting an upbeat television series into a dark, stylized action adventure where the main villain scared the shit out of me as a kid. The scene where the Joker turns that one mob boss into a skeleton gave me nightmares. Of course, Jack Nicholson is so identified with that role. How could you not be intimidated?
Tell me something, my friend. You ever dance with the devil in the pale moonlight? What? I always ask that of all my prey. I just like the sound of it.
Like Heath Ledger of The Dark Knight, fans were skeptical about the casting of Michael Keaton as Bruce Wayne. And like Heath Ledger, they were surprised that he did such a good job of falling into the role. Unlike Christian Bale in the Nolan movies, Keaton's Bruce Wayne is more humbled, and we see he's deeply troubled without having to go into a big, elaborate backstory. Whereas Bale was seen taking a swim with supermodels, Keaton half the time doesn't know what room he's in. Plus, it's got the Batmobile. The hell with the Tumbler, I want the Batmobile! That vehicle is so badass. Come on a list of Hollywood vehicles that you'd want to own, that would have to be on there.
Where does it get those wonderful toys?
The Batwing even makes a small appearance, but when it does, it's awesome.
He stole my balloons! Why didn't somebody tell me that he had one of those things?
Of course, everyone's already pointed out the gothic scenery and the nightmarish visuals that Burton paints for us, which only helps to enhance the dark mood of the film. It's been criticized for having a thin story, but come on, it's a superhero movie. Today, every comic book movie that comes out spends at least half its time setting up this big elaborate history. Look at the Avengers. It took them 5 separate movies just to build that one up. Batman is simple, it's direct, it's action-packed, and it's got some fine performances. But the one thing it does better than any other comic book movie is that it balances out the hero and the villain. They're both really interesting characters, and they play off of each other's weaknesses.
I have taken off my makeup. Let's see if you can take off yours.
Take the new Batman films. Batman Begins did a great job of setting up Bruce Wayne, but did we really care about Scarecrow or Liam Neeson's character? And I'm sorry, but as entertaining and as deep as people say Dark Knight is, Heath Ledger carried that movie. The first one said everything it had to about Batman, so he wasn't as interesting the second time around. Without Heath Ledger, I don't think Dark Knight would have been near as good. Batman has all the workings of a great superhero movie, and the movie studio should take a few lessons from it. Number 12. Gremlins 2: The New Batch. This was one I begged my parents to take me to see as a kid. I had to wait for it to come out to cable before I finally saw the sequel to one of my favorite childhood films. I know, Gremlins wasn't all cute and cuddly, and sometimes it's hard to even classify it as a family movie, but I grew up on Freddy and Jason, remember? Seriously, I didn't think Gremlins warranted a sequel. The story ended with the destruction of Stripe, and it leaves a pretty good, heartwarming message. I didn't think we'd ever see Gizmo again. Thank goodness I was wrong. I'm surprised whenever I hear people badmouth this movie. I can understand if they don't think it's as good as the original. It definitely doesn't have the same feel, and a lot of it feels like it was just lampooning itself. It takes a certain personality to enjoy this one, I guess.
What if they're eating in an airplane and they cross a time zone? I mean, it's always midnight somewhere.
It's simply all over the place. Very much like Sam Raimi's Evil Dead films, this is like watching a live-action cartoon. It's not as gory as Evil Dead, but it was upgraded from a PG to a PG-13, and there is some blood. Gremlin blood, but it's there. The innovation with this film was all the elaborate creature effects. When the gremlins appear, they start drinking different serums, transforming them into varied versions of themselves. There's a vegetable gremlin, a talking gremlin, a bat gremlin, an electric gremlin.
They come in electric too?
And my personal favorite, the spider gremlin. Gizmo finally decides to take a stand and fights back. And what annoys me about a lot of horror sequels is that they ignore the main cast of the previous installments. Thankfully, they brought back Zach Galligan and Phoebe Cates from the original, as well as the Futtermans. It's a real funny film, constantly hectic and yet always entertaining. Again, it's not as warm as the original, but the feeling of chaos it gives is just as easy to enjoy. I could watch this one repeatedly. Number 11. Clerks 2. Of the entire Kevin Smith catalog, it was hard to choose between this one and one of his earlier films, Chasing Amy. I still have a hard time believing this was made. It's the sequel to one of the biggest success stories in the history of independent cinema. Also, Kevin Smith dismissed the notion of doing another movie with Jay and Silent Bob after he closed the book on his View-esque universe with Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, which was a funny movie, but really disappointing as a send-off. Like all the other Smith fans, I was extremely skeptical when I went to see it. On the DVD, there's a bonus feature where we get the crowd reaction to its initial premiere at the Cannes Film Festival. The audience gave a 5-minute standing ovation, a reaction I believe was well-deserved. Clerks 2 is one of the funniest and heartfelt comedies I've ever seen, but what makes it more impressive, to me, is that it's a sequel that was made 12 years after its counterpart, and it managed to improve on almost every aspect. The writing, the look, and even the characters. While the original Clerks remains a personal story, this one hit home. Its message is deep, yet simple. There are subtle nods to the first movie, such as the film opening and ending in black and white. It takes a little longer to get off its feet, but once it's off the ground, we're back in full Kevin Smith mode. This, unlike that other Jay and Bob film, was a proper send-off.